One of the easiest things to do is the flat wash on dry paper. Next to that is the graded wash. I'm going to be using a little bit of burnt sienna. Now, if you don't have burnt sienna, you can take a little bit of cadmium red and some yellow ochre. You'll get more or less the same thing. You'll notice that I put the burnt sienna with a little bit of the blue here, a little bit of the dirty paint. We say dirty, just means it's neutral. And now I'm going to come down. My paper's on a 30-degree angle. And right in here is a shadow. Now, I'm going to leave the shadow a little bit. Just going to skirt over it like this. You see that? That's my first application. Next, I take a little bit of water, add a little more of the burnt sienna, so it's a little more saturated with color. You see? And this is where I pull my brush. You see, I like this right here. I pull it like that to get a texture. Not all the way, part of the way. As it gets closer, what I want to do is I want to add a little bit of the cadmium red. I could add the alizarin crimson, but the cadmium red and the burnt sienna are granular paints, so they'll go down into little grooves, which is what I want. Once again, coming in and fast, especially up the middle. See the curve? Pulling it. This is the good thing about arches, is you can pull the brush right over the top and you'll get a very nice gravel texture. Okay, next, I'm going to now add a little bit of the ultramarine. The ultramarine is granular, so I'm working with grainy paints. They're all going to sit on top. Now here's where I'm going to be adding a few little dark spots, especially in the middle of the road, the side, and over here, just here and there. I'm going to really sweep across here. Slow and fast, 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 right down to the bottom. And I don't mind leaving these little white pockets showing, or we call sparkle, because that's what gives texture. And we're working dry paper. Now, another very simple thing to do is intensify. Intensify color. Let's take a little bit of this cadmium deep or middle. It's more of like a mid-tone. This is be lighter, but a little cadmium. And it's pretty much full strength. And I put it right in front of the house like that, right here, right up to the tree and past it, and a little on this orange tree. And then I take my brush, so I put dry paint on dry paper, and now I soften the edges. Softening the edges, great little trick. You can tap the edge like that, but now you have a high concentration of paint in one area, and it's diffusing around that high concentration, see? Farther away, you don't want really intense paint, because the farther something is away, the less intense things are. This here needs a little bit of burnt sienna. I take a little bit of it, get rid of most of it, and I put it on the dark side. Just like that. Just one little stroke and I leave it. Just leave it alone. Okay, what else can we do with the burnt sienna? Well, let's pretend you don't have burnt sienna and let's make some. So in order to make it, you're going to need a little bit of cadmium red, and we'll put it right here. And you're going to need a little bit of yellow ochre, A little more yellow ochre. Pinch more. Maybe let's use the cadmium red deep. Now you'll notice it's not as dark as that. So we need to darken it with the smallest pinch of ultramarine. Okay, now I'm going to give that a little swipe there, and you can see it's very close to here. So let's put a little bit of that on a fence post. Let's just put a little, draw it on like that. See, the paper's dry, so this Arches paper picks up the texture of the fence post. See, lay it at 45 degrees and pull, pull. Don't be afraid to give it a little pull, because that gives it character. Pull, pull. Here's some little pull, a little back here, seems to be some little fence posts here. Wonderful thing about the country, it's full of old fence posts. Maybe on the back of the tree, just a little bit. Pull, pull, bark texture, pull, pull. On the roof, just the tip. This is more of a kind of a pushing, see? Just the tip of the brush comes along. A little warm shadow, sure. A little bit in here, sure. A little bit on this one, why not? Tap, tap, see? So now I've done some details. Here's my rail, and this one seems to be broken. I'll leave it broken for now. There's a rail, there's a rail, there's a rail. Just pull, pull, pull. You can practice pulling like that, or you can take a pencil, put it in your paint, and then I'll just do it up here. See, just draw it with the pencil. It's like a watercolor pencil. You should take a regular HB pencil and do your fine lines with your, there. You can use it for all kinds of little details. See? Now we have to add some shadow areas. I like to use violet for the shadow area. So I take a little bit of the, I'm sticking with the ultramarine today. I like the grainy paints, and I take a little bit of the alizarin crimson, and I get a fairly good purple. I like to check and see what the purple's like. Perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my picture so that you can see what better. And I just put the little purple, drop it in. Now remember, I'm doing the smaller things now, not the big things. I'll go back to the big things later. Notice how I've used the purple, and the tip of this little tiny brush is not that brush, it's about a 3 or a 4. Oh, there's a shadow. Little purple in that shadow. Where is my, there it is. And where I put the burnt sienna, you see it kind of blends right in with it very nicely. Okay, here comes the shadow on here. Now, shadows are typically soft. So what I want to do is lightly wet the side of the building. So you get your brush wet. There's a little sienna there, I don't care. I think I'll just go right over that. If it spreads, it spreads. Let's see? Just wet it a bit and let it sit for a moment. And while it's sitting, I'll show you how to do a ground shadow. A ground shadow, you don't have to wet the paper, but I do have to get a little more of this crimson. And I'm going to go a little darker this time, a little bit more, a little more. There we go. Okay, it's a little darker. I'll do the bottom here. Now you see that's a little dark, but I can lighten it very simply by touching it with a dry brush. See? I touch it, just tap it lightly. Of course, the pencil underneath dulls the violet nicely. And I'm looking for my little dark spots here and there. Just using the tip of the brush. A little bit here. When you do the faraway trees, just put in a few of the key branches like that. Don't put too many in. Now that is a typical shadow, and we have to run it up into the base like this and soften the edge. Leave that little white spot. Soften a few edges. There we go. And we're going to soften the edge here too. Shadows really ground things. I like to use my left hand instead of turning the paper. Keeps me sharp. There we go. Now that shadow is nice and light. Just tap it out a bit. Pure yellow here. Come right up beside it with kind of rough it up a bit on the rough paper, and dry brush. This is called dry brush. It's when you take that pure color, you just rub, rub, rub. And this is a really good technique. Dry brushing will give you texture, especially grass texture. A simple thing to master, dry brush. Come right up to the shadow. Blend it into the shadow just gently, ever so gently. Blend it into the shadow. Sure, we can add a dark right now. Sometimes I wait to the very end of the painting to do it. I'm going to mix my little fake burnt sienna with my ultramarine. I'm just going to put a really good little dark spot, drop it in. See? I'm going to drop in a few little dark spots. Are they going to stay this dark? More likely not. They're probably going to lighten up. Put a little bit there. A few little dark spots. Just little dark dots. Why am I doing this? Well, two reasons. I'm decorating the painting, or you might say I'm accessorizing. Kind of like shining up your shoes and putting a nice colorful hat on, whatever. Put a little bit of that into the windows here. Oh, I forgot about my shadow. So there's my violet. I'm going to lighten it so I don't want it too dark. Take a little bit of violet. There it is. See? I think that's about right. And here we go. So there's the shadow, and it comes up the side here, and it just kind of, you just kind of give a little wiggly tree there. There we go. That's a good shadow. I want to do a graded wash on dry paper right here with a little bit of orangey brown. So there's my violet. Simply by adding a little bit of the cadmium red, or you could add a little bit of the crimson and a little bit of the, there we go. Look at that. Now that's almost a burnt sienna, see? I mean a burnt umber. Burnt sienna, burnt umber. Two great browns. Okay, so I want this a little orangier. Is there a word called orangier? So I'll take a little bit of the Hansa, or if you have it, your cadmium yellow light. A little more of this. Okay, there we go. Watch this. I'm going to put one swipe in here. It's quite dark, you see, but using my dry brush technique and moving it across and getting a little fringe, you see on the top? The beautiful thing about arches is you get really nice textures. Now I'm going to go around my little orange tree there and leave that. You can always get it later. Come right up to the tree and continue right across, and the brush is just about gone. Now there's nothing left in it. See? Now what I've done is I've gone from dark to light. See? Dark to light. Dark to lighter. This is not dark enough, but I'm going to let it dry. Put another wash on it. Over here, a little bit of that orange that we just made, that little lovely color. See? It's kind of a brown. And let's put that on the tree here. Now that's a little dark, so I've got to get rid of it. Empty my brush. Once again, dry brush it, rub it, leaving little bits of white here and there. Dry brush it, dry brush. It's almost dry brushing, I would say, if you're good with a pencil, you can do an entire watercolor using dry brush because it's almost like pencil shading. Oh, look at that nice purple down in there. So dry brushing. Now over here, we don't want it to be warm. We want it a little cooler. This is warm, so we're going to put on a cooler wash over here. And one way to do it is just take some blue. So here's where I can really come in here and make this tree stand out a bit, especially if I leave these little white spots. Probably a little darker there. Take a little more blue. Coming right up to it there, and darken it here, and in here. There we go. Add a little bit of violet to it this time. Leaving these little indistinct shapes there for interest. And this tree is going to be darker later. There we go. Let's take a look at that now. Good. So this one looks like it's in the shadow. This one looks like it's in full light. I mean, I can do a lot of things with this. Let's just add a little spring green. My favorite spring green uses Thalocene. And a little Hansa yellow. And in the spring, the green is quite warm. So there we go. And it's got to be very light. And we're going to put a drop on. Just get rid of most of it. Kind of a dry brush. See? And we're just going to put a little haze in. It's into maybe the first 40 days of spring. And that's when the blush of spring turns green. Let that dry. Then we'll go back to some big areas.